Midnight. February 14th, 1932. A private Pullman car rattles through the frozen darkness somewhere between Albany and Montreal. The wood paneling trembles. Ice crystals form on the windows. Inside, 3 men sit in leather chairs that cost more than most Americans earn in a year. James Worthington III, oil, 62 years old, built his fortune on Texas crude. Edmund Blackwell, finance, Manhattan. His bank holds deposits for 17 governors and 43 senators. Arthur Pembroke, steel, Pittsburgh. His mills employ 14,000 men. On the table between them, a single telegram from Geneva. Shipment confirmed, 847 bars received, Vault 19C, acknowledgement required. Blackwell reads it twice. His hands shake slightly. Not from the cold. Worthington lights a cigar. The smoke curls toward the ceiling. He doesn't speak for 30 seconds. When he does, his voice is barely audible over the train wheels. Gentlemen, we have just committed a federal crime. Pembroke stares out the window at the darkness rushing past. Somewhere out there, $12 million in gold bars, 284,000 ounces, now sits in a Swiss vault bearing his family name. He smuggled it through Halifax on a merchant ship registered to a Canadian timber company that doesn't exist. The telegram burns in Blackwell's hand. Not literally, but he feels it burning. Because what they've done isn't just illegal. It's treason against a system they helped build. A system they no longer trust. A system that is, at this very moment, collapsing beneath the weight of its own lies. Outside, the Great Depression is devouring America. 9,000 banks have failed, 13 million unemployed, breadlines in every city, shantytown fires visible from the windows of the University Club. But these 3 men aren't fleeing poverty. They're fleeing something worse. They're fleeing the moment when the United States government realizes it doesn't have the gold it promised. The moment Washington discovers the vaults are lighter than the ledgers claim. The moment the president, whoever wins in November, decides that private gold ownership is a luxury the nation can no longer afford. Worthington taps ash into a crystal tray. Roosevelt will confiscate, he says. The question is when. Blackwell folds the telegram, slips it into his jacket pocket, right above his heart. Then we moved it just in time. What none of them know, what they cannot possibly know, is that within 14 months, their conspiracy will become national policy. Their crime will be vindicated by history. And the gold they hid overseas will be the only wealth in America that Washington cannot touch. The train screams into a tunnel. Everything goes black. The year is 1925. The Chrysler Building is rising. Hemingway is writing in Paris. Babe Ruth is crushing home runs. And in the marble halls of the New York Federal Reserve, a man named Benjamin Strong is sitting at his desk, staring at a column of numbers that doesn't add up. The numbers represent America's gold reserves, the physical metal backing every dollar in circulation, the foundation of the entire monetary system. According to the official ledger, 4,053 tons of gold, $5.6 billion worth, enough to back every Federal Reserve note, every bank deposit, every promise the United States has made to the world. According to the confidential audit Strong ordered 3 weeks ago, 3,847 tons, 206 tons missing. Not missing. That's not the right word. The gold exists. It's just moving, flowing, draining out of New York Harbor on ships bound for London and Paris, redeemed by foreign governments who no longer trust American promises. Strong closes the file, locks it in his desk drawer, tells no one. Because if the public knew, if the markets knew, the entire illusion would collapse in an afternoon. The 1920s were prosperity built on leverage, stock prices rising 30% annually, real estate booming, consumer credit exploding, everyone getting rich on paper, and beneath it all, a foundation of gold that was quietly, steadily disappearing. The wealthy knew first. They always do. In the private dining rooms of the Metropolitan Club, in the back offices of J.P. Morgan and Company, in the parlor cars of the 20th Century Limited, conversations were happening that never made the newspapers. The Fed is printing more notes than it has metal to back them. The French are redeeming dollars by the shipload. If there's a panic, they'll freeze the banks. They'll have to. And if they freeze the banks... No one finished that sentence. They didn't need to. By 1927, America's wealthiest families had begun a subtle, coordinated shift. Not dramatic, not obvious, but unmistakable if you knew where to look. Securities converted to gold certificates. Gold certificates converted to physical bars. Physical bars moved from bank vaults to private storage facilities. Private storage facilities that just happened to have excellent relationships with transatlantic shipping companies. A Boston textile magnate opens a business account at a Geneva bank, transfers $800,000 in gold over 6 months, tells his accountant it's for European expansion. A Philadelphia railroad baron buys a warehouse in Toronto, fills it with 200 bars of gold, lists it on his tax return as Canadian real estate investment. A Chicago meatpacking heir charters a private ship to London. The manifest lists industrial machinery. The actual cargo weighs 42 tons and arrives at a Threadneedle Street vault at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. This wasn't panic. Not yet. This was insurance. The smartest men in America were quietly, methodically, moving their wealth beyond the reach of Washington. Because they'd seen the Federal Reserve's real numbers. Because they'd watched European gold redemptions accelerate. Because they understood something the public didn't. The American dollar was a promise backed by gold the government didn't fully possess. And, when that truth emerged, when the markets finally realized, there would be exactly 2 types of people, those who moved early and those who lost everything. In September 1928, a private memo circulated among 12 banking families. No copies were kept. No secretaries typed it. It was handwritten by Edmund Blackwell himself, passed from hand to hand, then burned. Decades later, one participant would describe its contents to a historian. It said 3 things. First, the gold standard is mathematically unsustainable. Second, the next president will face an impossible choice between deflation and devaluation. Third, move your gold offshore before he takes office. The memo was dated September 14, 1928, 47 days before the market began to crack. October 24, 1929, Black Thursday. The day isn't important. What's important is what happened the following Monday, in a conference room most Americans have never heard of, the New York Fed, 3rd floor, emergency meeting. Present, representatives from Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, Chase National Bank, and the Federal Reserve itself, 12 men total, combined wealth north of $400 million. The market has just lost $14 billion in value. Banks are calling in margin loans. Brokers are jumping out of windows. The newspapers are screaming panic in 72-point type. But these 12 men aren't discussing stock prices. They're discussing gold. Because in the 72 hours since Black Thursday, something unprecedented has happened. Wealthy Americans have withdrawn $127 million in gold from New York banks. Not dollars. Gold. Physical metal. And they're not putting it back. One banker stands. His name is irrelevant. His words are not. Gentlemen, if this continues, we won't have enough reserves to honor foreign redemptions. And if we can't honor foreign redemptions, the Europeans will panic. And if the Europeans panic, they'll demand every ounce we owe them, which is... He pauses, checking his notes. 1,147 tons more than we currently hold in the vaults. Silence. Another banker, older, coughs into his hand. What you're describing is a run on the U.S. Treasury. Yes. By other governments. Yes. That can't happen. It's already happening. Between October 1929 and December 1930, foreign governments redeemed $742 million in US dollars for gold. the Federal Reserve shipped 387 tons of metal across the Atlantic. Every week, ships left New York Harbor riding lower in the water than they should, holds filled with crates marked machinery or industrial samples. The crates contained gold bars, hundreds of them, thousands. France took 210 tons. Britain took 156 tons. Even Argentina redeemed $18 million. And while foreign governments drained the official reserves, America's wealthy were draining what remained. The exodus was invisible to ordinary citizens. It didn't make headlines. It happened in private transactions, coded telegrams, midnight meetings in bank vaults that smelled of brass and old paper. A Pittsburgh steel magnate walks into Mellon Bank, asks to withdraw $400,000, not in cash, in gold bars. The manager hesitates, makes a phone call. 20 minutes later, 4 guards wheel out a cart with 62 bars, each weighing 27.4 pounds. The magnate loads them into a Cadillac, drives to a warehouse near the Canadian border. 3 weeks later, those bars are in a London vault. The paperwork claims they're payment for imported wool. There was no imported wool. A New York shipping heir converts his entire portfolio, $2.3 million in stocks and bonds, into gold certificates, then redeems the certificates for physical metal. His lawyer handles the transaction through a Panamanian holding company. The gold goes to Zurich by way of Lisbon. When asked later why he did it, the heir shrugs. I didn't trust Hoover to defend the dollar. He was right not to. By 1931, the panic had spread beyond the ultra-wealthy. Upper-middle-class professionals, doctors, lawyers, factory owners, began converting savings into gold and storing it anywhere except American banks. 900 U.S. banks failed in 1930. Another 2,294 failed in 1931. Every time a bank collapsed, depositors lost everything. Life savings evaporated, retirements destroyed, families financially annihilated overnight. But the wealthy, their gold was in Zurich, in London, in Geneva, in numbered vaults with Swiss guards and 14-inch steel doors, and the network that moved it had become shockingly sophisticated. By 1931, a shadow industry existed solely to transport American gold overseas. Private couriers, shipping companies with entire divisions dedicated to confidential freight, insurance brokers who specialized in undisclosed valuable cargo, railway companies that offered discreet cargo handling through Canadian border crossings. One courier, a former Pinkerton agent named Daniel Reeves, would later estimate he personally transported $47 million in gold between New York and London in 1931 alone. His method, traveling as a mining equipment salesman, carrying gold bars in custom luggage designed to look like sample drills and industrial parts. He made 43 trips, never lost a single ounce. When asked if he felt guilty facilitating capital flight while America collapsed, Reeves replied, "I was paid to move metal, not worry about economics." The Swiss banks loved it, loved all of it. American gold flooded into Zurich and Basel at unprecedented rates. Between 1930 and 1932, Swiss vaults received an estimated $890 million in American assets, most of it gold. The Swiss invented the numbered account specifically to serve American clients. No names, just numbers, complete anonymity, utterly secure. If the U.S. government came asking questions, the Swiss bankers would smile, shrug, and cite client confidentiality. Washington knew this was happening. Of course they knew. Treasury officials read the shipping manifests. They saw the export numbers. They understood exactly what was occurring. But they couldn't stop it, because the wealthy weren't technically breaking any laws. Not yet. Gold ownership was still legal. Cross-border transfers were still permitted, and the government couldn't ban gold exports without admitting the dollar was in crisis. So they watched, and waited, and quietly, desperately, tried to figure out how to stop the bleeding before the entire system bled out. In a private letter from Treasury Secretary Andrew Mellon to President Hoover, dated November 1931, one line stands out: "Sir, If the current rate of gold withdrawal continues, we will have insufficient reserves to maintain the gold standard by March 1933. March 1933. The month a new president would take office, the month everything would change. November 8th, 1932. Franklin Delano Roosevelt defeats Herbert Hoover in a landslide. The markets barely react. They're too exhausted, too broken. The Dow has lost 89% of its peak value. Unemployment is at 25%. The banking system is on life support. But in the private clubs of Manhattan, in the oak-paneled studies of Philadelphia's Main Line, in the smoking rooms of Chicago's wealthiest mansions, a different reaction occurs. Panic. Quiet. Sophisticated. Utterly controlled panic. Because Roosevelt's campaign rhetoric has been clear. The gold standard is strangling the economy. Something must be done. The dollar must be flexible. Every wealthy American understands what flexible means. It means devaluation. It means confiscation. It means the government will take the gold and revalue it higher, pocketing the difference. It means anyone who keeps their gold in America will be robbed by executive order. The exodus accelerates. Between November 1932 and March 1933, just 4 months, an estimated $1.8 billion in American private wealth flees overseas. Most of it in gold, the largest capital flight in American history. Ships leave New York Harbor every week, riding dangerously low in the water. Manifests list machinery, industrial supplies, scrap metal. The actual cargo is gold bars wrapped in canvas and steel, stacked in holds designed to carry grain. One ship, the SS Mercantile, departs on January 14, 1933, bound for Southampton. Official cargo, agricultural equipment. Actual cargo, 847 gold bars belonging to 7 New York families. Total value $11.6 million. The ship's captain is paid $50,000 to forget what he's carrying. He earns every penny. 2 days out of port, a storm nearly sinks them. The captain seriously considers jettisoning the cargo to save the ship. He doesn't. The gold arrives in London on January 29th. All 7 families profit enormously 6 months later. In Zurich, the Swiss are building new vaults, literally constructing new underground facilities to handle the influx. The Schweizerische Bankgesellschaft, Swiss Bank Corporation, opens a new vault facility in Basel in February 1933. Capacity, 2,400 tons of gold. It fills within 3 months. A Geneva vault manager named Klaus Hoffmann later describes the scene. Americans arrived every day, sometimes 3 or 4 in a single afternoon. They'd come with lawyers, translators, briefcases full of documents. They wanted complete anonymity. They wanted absolute security. They were terrified, not of poverty, of their own government. The vault records from that period show deposits from identifiable American sources. Boston Textile Family, 340 bars, 10,472 ounces. New York Banking Dynasty, 612 bars, 18,151 ounces. Chicago Meatpacking Air, 289 bars, 8,903 ounces. Philadelphia Railroad Fortune, 891 bars, 27,441 ounces. These are just 4 names among hundreds. The total is staggering. In Washington, Roosevelt isn't even in office yet, and already the crisis is spiraling beyond control. In January 1933, Senator Carter Glass, architect of the Federal Reserve Act, delivers a private briefing to Roosevelt. The content of that meeting was never officially recorded, but Glass's personal diary contains one entry from that night. Told the president-elect the truth. We are hemorrhaging gold faster than at any point in American history. If it continues, we'll be forced off the gold standard by summer. He asked what could be done. I told him, stop the bleeding or amputate the limb. He asked which I recommended. I said, both. Amputating the limb meant ending private gold ownership, which is exactly what Roosevelt was already planning. The wealthy knew it was coming. The rumors were everywhere. So they accelerated. February 1933. A Minnesota grain magnate charters a private rail car to Vancouver. From there, a ship to Hong Kong, then London. The cargo, 3.4 million in gold bars. He dies in 1958. His will reveals the gold was never declared, never taxed, never touched by American authorities. His grandchildren inherit it in 1962. By then it's worth $8.9 million. A Texas oil baron moves gold through Mexico City to Buenos Aires, then to London. Total transported, 1,247 bars. He bribes customs officials, shipping clerks, railway inspectors, and a Mexican army colonel. Total bribes, $120,000. Total saved from confiscation, $4.2 million. Return on investment, 3,400%. A Connecticut insurance executive sends gold via diplomatic pouch. Technically illegal, but impossible to trace. He has friends in the State Department, friends who are also moving their gold. The system protects itself, but not everyone made it. On February 28, 1933, the SS Providence, sailing from Boston to Liverpool, is stopped by U.S. Coast Guard cutter Eagle. Anonymous tip: the ship is searched. In a cargo hold marked farming equipment, inspectors find 412 gold bars. Value, $1.4 million. Owner, a Philadelphia banking family. The gold is seized. The family lawyers file an injunction. They argue the gold is being transported for legitimate international business. They have paperwork. They have contracts. They have receipts for non-existent agricultural equipment purchased from non-existent British suppliers. The case drags through courts for 2 years. By the time it's resolved, Executive Order 6102 has made the entire dispute moot. The gold is gone, confiscated, melted down, turned into reserves for the U.S. Treasury. The Philadelphia family loses everything because they were 3 days too slow. March 3rd, 1933. Roosevelt's last day before inauguration. A final desperate surge. Wealthy Americans liquidate everything: stocks, bonds, real estate, and convert to gold. The Federal Reserve reports withdrawals of $37 million in gold in a single day, the largest single-day withdrawal in history. That night, in a study in Manhattan, Edmund Blackwell, the banker from our opening scene, sits with his attorney. They're reviewing documents, transfers, receipts. Evidence of $16 million moved to Geneva, London, and Paris over the past 16 months. The attorney asks, if Roosevelt issues an order tomorrow banning gold ownership, could they prosecute you? Blackwell thinks for a long moment. Then, they could try, but the gold isn't here anymore. It's not in their jurisdiction. It's not in their reach. So you're safe? No. Blackwell pours himself a whiskey. His hand is steady. His voice is not. I've committed treason against the system I helped build. Whether they prosecute me or not, I'm guilty. We all are. Guilty of what? Of being right. The clock strikes midnight. Roosevelt's presidency begins in 8 hours. March 4th, 1933. Inauguration Day. Roosevelt's speech is famous. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. What's less famous is what happens immediately afterward. March 5th, 1933. Roosevelt declares a national bank holiday. Every bank in America closes. Locked doors, armed guards, depositors pounding on glass, screaming to access their own money. The official reason, preventing bank runs. The real reason, stopping gold withdrawals while Roosevelt's team figures out what to do next. The holiday lasts 4 days. On March 9th, Congress passes the Emergency Banking Act. It gives Roosevelt unprecedented power over gold, currency, and banking. The vote takes 38 minutes. Most congressmen don't even read it. Section 2 is the key. During time of war, or during any other period of national emergency, the president may investigate, regulate, or prohibit any transactions in foreign exchange, transfers of credit, and the export, hoarding, melting, or earmarking of gold. Translation: Roosevelt can do whatever he wants with gold. No oversight, no appeal. The wealthy who moved early start to breathe easier. Their gold is gone, offshore, beyond reach. The wealthy who waited start to panic. April 5th, 1933. Executive Order 6102. The hammer falls. The order is 1 to 200 words long. The critical section is short. All persons are hereby required to deliver on or before May 1st, 1933, to a Federal Reserve Bank or a branch or agency thereof, or to any member bank of the Federal Reserve System, all gold coin, gold bullion, and gold certificates now owned by them. Exceptions: jewelers, dentists, industrial users, and gold coins with recognized special value to collectors. Everyone else, surrender your gold. You have 26 days. The price, $20.67 per ounce. The official rate, the rate that's been fixed since 1879. Penalty for non-compliance, $10,000 fine, equivalent to $230,000 today, and or 10 years in federal prison. The American public is stunned, confused, terrified. Gold ownership has been legal since the founding of the Republic. Now it's a federal crime. But Roosevelt frames it perfectly. Hoarding gold is hurting recovery. Patriotic Americans will gladly exchange their gold for dollars to help the nation. And millions do. They have no choice. They need the money. They need to eat. They need to survive. So they stand in lines at Federal Reserve branches, holding bags of gold coins and family heirlooms. And they exchange them for paper money they don't trust, backed by a government they no longer believe in. The Federal Reserve collects 2,213 tons of gold from ordinary Americans between April and June 1933. But the wealthy who moved early, their gold never enters those lines. It's in Zurich, in London, in Paris, beyond Roosevelt's reach. And then the betrayal, January 30th, 1934. 9 months after Executive Order 6102. Roosevelt signs the Gold Reserve Act. The dollar is officially devalued. The gold price rises from $20.67 to $35 per ounce, a 69% increase. Overnight, Americans who surrendered gold at $20.67 watch helplessly as the government revalues that same gold at $35. The Treasury profits $2.8 billion. That's the value stolen from citizens who obeyed the confiscation order. But Americans who moved gold offshore before confiscation, they profit enormously. Edmund Blackwell, our banker, moved $16 million in gold to Geneva in 1932. He purchased it at $20.67. In 1934, after devaluation, that gold is worth $27.3 million. He's gained $11.3 million by defying his own government. The Texas oil baron who smuggled gold through Mexico, his 247 bars increased from $4.2 million to $7.2 million. A $3 million profit for breaking federal law. The Boston textile magnate, the Chicago meatpacking heir, the Philadelphia railroad fortune, all of them watching their offshore gold appreciate by 70%, while their fellow Americans are legally robbed. And they don't say a word. Can't say a word, because admitting they profited would mean admitting they moved the gold, which would mean federal prosecution. So they stay silent and wealthy. In Switzerland, Klaus Hoffmann, the vault manager, later recalls American clients visiting in late 1934. They'd come to check on their gold, stand in front of the vault door, stare at the bars. They never said, "Thank you," but I knew what they were thinking. They were thinking, I was right. I was right not to trust them. How many Americans successfully moved gold offshore before confiscation? The true number is unknowable. These were secret transactions designed to leave no trace, no records, no paper trail. But estimates based on shipping manifests, Swiss bank records, and post-war interviews suggest between $2 billion and $3.5 billion in American private wealth left the country between 1930 and 1933. Most of it never came back. Some families kept their gold in Swiss vaults for generations, passing it down through wills and trusts, never reporting it, never declaring it, a secret inheritance of metal that the American government once tried and failed to confiscate. In 1953, an elderly New York banker gives a deathbed interview to an economics historian. The banker helped coordinate gold transfers for 12 families in 1932-33. His final words on the subject: "We didn't trust the government, and everything that happened afterward proved we were right not to trust them. They seized the gold, they devalued the dollar, they blamed the public for hoarding. But the real hoarders, the ones who moved early, they were called criminals for doing exactly what any rational person would do. The crime wasn't moving the gold. The crime was believing American promises in the first place. Roosevelt's gold confiscation achieved its goal. The Treasury acquired enough gold to back the devalued dollar. The banking system stabilized. The Depression didn't end, not for another decade, but the acute crisis passed. And the wealthy, the ones who saw it coming, they emerged richer, more powerful, and more convinced than ever that the U.S. government could not be trusted with monetary policy. That conviction would shape American finance for the next century. The 1933 gold confiscation is taught in economics classes as a necessary evil, a painful but essential step to end the Depression. Roosevelt's bold action, controversial but effective. What's not taught is the underground resistance, the secret exodus. The billions moved offshore, the wealthy families who defied confiscation and profited enormously. Because that story reveals something uncomfortable. The American financial system has always had two tiers, one for those who trust the system, and one for those who don't need to. The gold exodus of 1932-33 created the template for modern offshore wealth. Swiss banking secrecy began with American gold deposits, numbered accounts, invented to serve Americans hiding assets from their own government, tax havens. The infrastructure was built on capital flight from New York to Zurich, Panama Papers, Paradise Papers. Every modern offshore leak traces its origin to the same moment, when America's wealthy realized their government might seize their assets and decided to move those assets beyond reach. The pattern repeats, always. 2008, financial crisis. Wealthy investors pull capital out of American banks, move assets to Singapore, Luxembourg, Cayman Islands. The public bails out the banks. The wealthy are already gone. 2020, pandemic panic. Markets crash. While ordinary Americans lose jobs and homes, the wealthiest accelerate offshore asset transfers. By the time the recovery starts, $400 billion has left the country, the exact same playbook as 1932. Recognize the crisis early, move quietly, profit from chaos, let everyone else suffer the consequences, and the government can't stop it, won't stop it, because the people moving assets offshore are the same people who fund political campaigns, who sit on Federal Reserve advisory boards, who have Treasury secretaries on speed dial. The system protects itself. In 2013, an elderly woman in Connecticut dies. Her estate is settled quietly. Among the assets, a safety deposit box key. The box is in Geneva. The vault number is 19C. Inside, 142 gold bars, placed there by her grandfather in February 1933. Never touched, never declared, never taxed. Value in 1933, $97,000. Value in 2013, $7.3 million. The family pays the inheritance tax on the appreciated value. They keep the gold. No one asks where it came from. No one questions why it was in Switzerland for 80 years. Because everyone understands. The wealthy always have an exit, always have a backup, always have assets beyond the government's reach. That's not corruption. That's not conspiracy. That's just reality. The history books say Roosevelt saved America by confiscating gold. The untold history says Roosevelt confiscated gold from everyone, too slow or too poor to move it first. Both are true. In the end, the 1933 confiscation revealed the truth about money, about power, about who really controls the American economy. It's not the government, it's not the people, it's the small group of families and institutions who move early, move quietly, and move their wealth beyond reach before the rest of the country realizes the game has changed. They moved gold to Zurich in 1932. They moved assets offshore in 2008. They're moving capital right now, this moment, based on information you and I won't hear about for another 6 months. History doesn't repeat, but the patterns never change. The wealthy don't trust systems. They trust metal. They trust secrecy. They trust their ability to see catastrophe before it arrives and move before everyone else realizes the exits are closing. In March 1933, while ordinary Americans stood in breadlines, the families who moved their gold early were sitting in Swiss bank conference rooms, watching their wealth appreciate, knowing they'd been right. Right to distrust promises, right to move early, right to protect themselves. And if you asked them whether they felt guilty, whether they felt any responsibility for the millions who suffered while they profited, they'd look at you like you were speaking a foreign language. Because in their world, there are only two types of people: those who see the collapse coming and those who don't. The first group moved their gold to Zurich. The second group surrendered it. For $20.67 an ounce, choose which group you want to be in, because the next crisis is already building and the wealthy are already moving.